The following program contains language that may not be suitable for listeners of all ages. Listener discretion is advised. All right, 924 2023. And luckily, I have luckily I've got W6OBB back on here. Last week was a gosh darn fluke, okay? I made a big boo-boo and he was like, "You know what? I'll go ahead and come back on this week." So I've got W6OBB on. And good morning. We've got our first game just started. New Orleans Saints versus the Green Bay Packers. And we've got Jordan Love is the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. And former quarterback of the Raiders, Derek Carr, is playing today. I don't know why I said that, but hopefully everybody gets out there and watches that game. But forget about the game now and listen to me like this is live, right? Anyhow, good morning. It's about 8 minutes after the top of the hour, and we're going to get into this in just a few seconds. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. 5 by 9. That was my attempt at doing some, I almost said George Norrie. Ooh. Yeah. Art Bell. So one of the things that really pisses me off about the amateur radio hobby are people that make the hobby unfun. I don't know if others have noticed that, but I've got a couple of guys that I talk to occasionally on the local repeater here in my area. "Oh, I don't go to 10 meters because it's so close to 11 meters. Well, it's two completely different bands of frequencies that one is for citizens and the other is for licensed amateurs, people who took a test. I mean, I know, just because you took a test doesn't mean that you're any better than anybody else. You are supposed to have a common understanding of the bands and how they work and where you're supposed to operate. And look, yesterday on 28.400, I heard a guy playing Suicidal Tendencies on that frequency, and I want to say it was institutionalized. And I'm like, wait, hold on. I had to double check the frequency counter on my radio, and I'm like, wait, this is not 11 meters. This is 28.4. What is going on here? So let's make the hobby fun. Let's make the hobby exciting. Let's for those people that are not licensed yet, that are maybe thinking of becoming an amateur radio operator, let's be welcoming. Let's not be sticks in the mud. Let's keep it exciting. So, and that's one of the main reasons that I have guests on that are active, and they go out and they do activations, whether it be Pota, whether it be soda. Let's make it fun, okay? So, and keep it exciting. So we've got today, again, this Sunday. Luckily, he was a team player. My fault. So on here I'm using OBS to record my podcast, and I have two settings. In any OBS, there are two settings. You have an input for the sound card and an output for the sound card. My specific model, I need to have them both set to the same thing and have it go into the sound card to process all that information. So we're doing a really awesome podcast last week. Hit on everything that I wanted to hit on, and the idiot that I am, I waited till the last minute to get Mike on here, and we had a great podcast, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, wait, hold on. I got to tell this guy that we just spent an hour doing a podcast that had no friggin' sound on your side, and it's like, I know it wasn't him, it was me. Anyway, anyway, good morning, Mike. How are you, man? Welcome to 5 by 9.
Hey, good morning, Tim. Doing well. That's okay. We got a dry run. Got some practice. I think
Yeah.
I've only ever been interviewed once before, and it was like 20 years ago. So, and it was about something not ham radio related, and I
Okay,
sounded
cool.
like a total fool. So it was nice to have a practice run.
You know, I've been doing this stuff, honestly. I've been doing this stuff since about 2001. My second oldest is 22 years old. So this is like nothing new to me. I've been doing this since the launch of Live 365, the original Live 365. We used to do a radio program on there that was picked up on a couple of different stations throughout Texas. Then again, I did it later with a good friend of mine. He's not in the amateur community. Um, I think I told you about my friend Michael Van Deven, or AKA Michael Walker. We used to do a podcast that was picked up in Texas as well. And when that ended, he started doing another program on his website, via doing podcasts and stuff like that, on his website called George Norrie Sucks. And believe it or not, and I'll bring this up again, Art Bell was a member, and so was George Norrie. And although they never took pop shots outright, there were some, I guess you would, maybe a good word to use is innuendos that would pop each other. And anyway, Michael got to do a really good interview with Art Bell, and it was a really, really cool interview. And I've actually got two copies of that, and I have another copy with Art Bell being interviewed by Joe Rogan, which was a really good interview. And the questions were really good. Anyway, enough about that. So let's just get into this. So good morning, and at the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned that I'm just like really, really, I get angry at people who will go out on the bands and say that there's no activity on said frequencies and or said bands. Like there was a comment yesterday on TikTok, on my TikTok thing. Oh, wait, how are you hearing this when there's no activity on 10? I'm like, wait, I just got a confirmation today from a station out of Spain that, dude, we made contact yesterday. I heard you. Echo Bravo 1 Delta Juliet from Spain. Dude, you're 5 by 9. Well, get on the bands, man. The bands are opening. 20 is not active during the day anymore. It's active at night. 10 meters was active from 6 a.m., like 6:30, 7 o'clock, until well after 7 p.m. here in California. So that goes to tell you that it was very active at night in other parts of the United States. So people, the bands are opening. The conditions are here. Get on there, get active. So anyhow, I'm babbling. So I've got Mike here. He does Pota activation, soda activation. For those of you that don't understand what soda activations are, Summit's on the air. For those of you that don't know what POTA activations are, it's Parks on the Air. It's a way to get us fat, obese ham operators out into the community and chase DX or just chase stations throughout the country. It's a very fun hobby, and Mike has mentioned to me last week when I screwed up the podcast that although he has not been doing this for 20 years or whatever, he's just recently started doing it, but the cool thing is when you go to his TikTok channel, there's never a dull moment on his channel, and that is what I love. For me, on the other hand, I haven't been as active on TikTok. I did start doing videos because the conditions are here. So I've got Mike here. He is, where exactly are you at, Mike? I forget.
I am located in Atascadero, or as the locals call it, a Trashcadero. It's the more economical place to live in San Luis Obispo County, although
Okay.
that's not really economical when you compare to going into the valley.
Uh,
But I'm about 15 miles inland from Morro Bay, if
okay.
you're familiar with Morro Bay or
Yeah.
Morro Rock.
Yeah. Okay. I remember Atascadero. I don't know if you ever listened to Phil Hendry before. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. He used to do a skit with his voices about a psycho that lived in Atascadero, and he was in some asylum over there. But so I don't even know why I brought that up. What a dumbass. But anyhow, so if I'm not mistaken, I remember you've been licensed for several years, but you had gotten out of the hobby and gotten back into the hobby. And
It,
you were originally licensed in what year?
I think it was 2011. I'd have to go back and look. 2011, maybe. Yeah, I think 2011.
Okay, all right. And like, what exactly was it that got you into wanting to go out and climb up hilltops and mountaintops and go out and do summits on the air?
It's kind of a combination of a few things. One thing is getting old and fat and out of shape, and the
Yeah,
doctor's saying your blood pressure's high, your blood sugar's
yeah.
you're getting borderline diabetic. You need to
Hmm.
start exercising. And another was we moved over here to Atascadero or the Central Coast area about 8, 9 years ago. And when we lived in Fresno, had a much nicer place because cost of living there was a lot less, and I had a decent antenna up and could run. I was actually running legal limit back then, and we move over here and we're paying about twice as much for this tiny little condo with a backyard that's about 25 by 20. Not real antenna restrictions because it's a HOA.
Hmm.
I did finally end up finding something that worked, but it's still a compromised situation. So it
Hmm.
gets a little frustrating trying to operate from here sometimes. And I thought, well, you know what? I could go out and do soda, and that's what I originally had planned to do. So I bought a little Zygu
Hmm.
5105 for doing soda a few years ago, but then never actually got around to it. And I did do I attempted a POTA activation a couple years ago, but the first time I did, it was a bad experience. Had sheriffs show up, rangers show up because a Karen kept calling and complaining, and eventually they said, "You're not doing anything wrong,
But
but would you please leave because this Karen over here said she's going to keep calling until we make you leave." So I was
wow.
like, okay, I'll pack up. So after like two or three contacts, I packed up and moved on. But watching lots of YouTube videos and
Yeah.
seeing that that was probably a semi-rare occurrence, I finally got back into it a few months ago and have been nonstop. So I love the soda because of the exercise. Although working on carrying the stuff up myself, I bring my 16-year-old,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he's my pack mule. He carries
Right
my
on.
bag, and with my gear and water that he carries, it's about 40 pounds, and I carry about 20 pounds of extra gear if I'm going to do digital or if I need to bring up some extra stuff.
Yeah. It's good to have a young one with you. You can have them be the mule and you'll be the
Yep.
guide. Yeah, that's great. Um,
Sometimes his friends come and I don't have to carry anything.
that's great, man. Yeah, guys, come on, man. You can check out the site. So the good thing is that the
I
web.
bribe him with lunch.
Yeah, yeah. The good thing is that the weather's changing. I know it's supposed to be a little warmer this week than it was last week, but as you can see, that um, the the heat is cooling off come about 6:30 in the evening, and then lo and behold, here in the next couple of months, it'll be nice and chilly, so it won't be so hot. Uh, Hiking up a hilltop or something like that, which is great. So I had to ask you. So you actually got the call sign from a radio legend, and I had to ask you this on the podcast, and I asked you this last week, but I didn't ask you how deep you were into Art Bell. Uh, so you got the call sign, and when did you become a fan of Art Bell? And was he kind of the reason that you first got into amateur radio, or was it just you were a fan and that was it?
He was one of the main reasons I got into ham radio. It was back in the early 90s. I lived with my grandma for a while, and I remember coming in at night and she would have the AM radio on, listening to his show, and I'd come in to get something to eat, and I just got hooked on it after hearing it a few times, and
Yeah.
bought a little AM radio and brought it into my bedroom and started listening to it if I was driving at night, and just got addicted to it. And then he also would talk about amateur radio every now and then. And one of my probably my all-time favorite episode of his was with Kevin Mitnick,
Mm-hmm.
which he just passed away here, I think a
Yeah.
month or two ago. Um, but he also, besides his hacking, had talked about his experiences in ham radio. But one of the things that I used to restore old tube radios, and I went to this guy's house that was selling off a bunch of stuff, and along with his radios, tubes, all of his old parts and whatnot were old books. And I picked up this one book that was in the lot of junk I bought from him, and it was a 1975 ARRL handbook. And I started looking through it, and I love tinkering with stuff. I was already building antennas, like these little loop antennas with tons of wire for AM, the AM radios, trying to see how far I could pick up signals from other states, so I could listen to Art Bell on these old tube radios at night. And started flipping through that book, and I was like, this seems really cool. And I know that I've heard Art Bell talk about this. This was, back in early or like 2010 or so. And the more I kind of started going through this book, and then I started searching for Art Bell shows that were ham radio related to re-listen to them, and ended up going out and getting my ticket. And while I ended up hearing Art Bell on the air many times on amateur radio, I was never able to break through the pileup. However, I did make it through to a show a few times. I probably
Awesome.
sound like a complete moron because I remember I had a question once for Michio Kaku, and he ended up getting off the call before I accepted it. So I tried to think of something on the fly. I don't even remember what it was. And I actually had corresponded with Art Bell a few times via email. And when I was told him I was getting into ham radio, and he actually gave me a cell phone number, but I never had the nerve to call it until right
Wow.
after he passed. I called it, and it was still connected, and I left him a goodbye message. Although maybe he'll
Yeah.
hear it on the other side.
Yeah. Wow. One of my favorite guests, also the Japanese guy. What's his name? Micho. Oh crap.
I can never say it right.
Neither can I.
Michio Kaku, I think.
Yeah, Micho Kaku. Al Bielik. I did like Bob Lazar. I like Linda Moulton Howell. Um, and that priest. I forget what the hell his name was. For the life of me, I can't remember.
I
Um,
know who you're talking. The one that did the exorcisms.
yes, yes.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but I know exactly who you're talking about.
And I liked the Spiricom thing where he would play back the voices. I also liked the guy from Australia, that the reverse speech, Daryl, or I almost said Daryl Oates, but something Oates from Australia. I actually had him on one of our shows that we did Had him on twice. Great guests. Um, it was cool because, and I had said this last week, and I remember in the 90s, um, I would always leave my AM radio on at night and throw the antenna out the window. Not just that I could hear Art Bell, Coast to Coast AM or Dreamland or whatever on my AM radio. The local station was KFI AM 640, but the show was syndicated around the country, and I like to listen to the stations that were distant. I always thought that was cool. He came in on one from Salt Lake, one from Colorado, a couple of other ones, but I remember there were occasions when I would literally have to turn that radio off because some of the stuff that he talked about scared the pants off of me. And, but I have another friend that was, like I said, he did a podcast and would have Art on a couple of times. And it was just that Art seemed like such a down-to-earth guy aside from what he did. I don't know. I remember, there was that incident where he was doing the show on Sirius, the second show, and somebody had come onto his property with a gun or whatever. Not really sure if that was legit. I don't know. Maybe it was just Art didn't want to do radio anymore and didn't want to let his fans down or whatever, but
Yeah.
And then I never got a chance to hear Art on the air on amateur radio. I do know that Art loved 75 meters, and he had gotten tired of it, and he's just pretty proper guy. Yeah, he was on Sirius, and you could use expletives, but he didn't care for that. He didn't want you calling in, cursing, and everything else. If it was a slip up, it was okay. But Art was a gentleman, and I do know that he operated 160 meters as well. But I remember his conversation, one of the conversations that I have a recording of where he was talking to a guest, and I don't remember who it was. It was another guy in the amateur community, but it was a really cool conversation, him talking about the equipment that he has and what he spent on his antennas and why he had so many antennas and how much he loved the hobby. But as a fan of him, I could go back and listen to, oh my gosh, man, the wonderful Ghost to Ghost AM during the
Oh,
Halloween. Yeah.
those are great.
And the only 2 years that I'm missing are, oh crap, it would be the first year that he was on Sirius, not the second run, but the first run. And I forget, it wasn't Dark Matter. It was the first one, and I don't remember what the hell it was called.
Was it Midnight in the Desert?
Yeah, maybe it was Midnight in the Desert was the second one, and the first one was Dark Matter. Or I don't have those two, but I have every year before that. And his last time leaving the radio when he did the show from the Philippines, and I could go back and listen to those episodes over and over because they're just, you hear something different every time. And that was, man, that was, there are no more guys in radio anymore that are even worth listening to, that were guys that were in the radio when, I don't know how old you are. I'm 49.
I'm 48. I think, yes, 48.
Okay.
Think about it. I just had a birthday a month ago or two months ago.
So you and I are around the same age, and I was always one of them kids that enjoyed going and listening to AM radio at night. It will never be the same. There are no more good guys on radio anymore. I don't care what frequency or AM broadcast or FM broadcast. AM and FM broadcast are done. The only thing you're going to hear pretty soon on either of them are news stations. Though that form of radio is gone. It is gone. We will no longer have that. Literally now, it's just a friggin' jukebox that goes on. You can drive from one end of the coast to the other and hear the same stations branded with the same monikers and everything else. It's just really terrible. Um,
Yeah.
but when I say guys like him, and I know a lot of people don't like this guy, and he's become a woke guy and all this, that, and the other, and I don't even like to bring this up, but there was a time when Howard Stern was funny. Uh,
Yeah.
I
I
don't.
tried listening to him recently, and it's
Oh,
just
oh,
not the same as it was in the
no,
90s.
no. It's like listening to um, Mr. Brady from the Brady Bunch behind a microphone. Um,
Yeah.
so it's really sad. And I am a fan of. I had mentioned it before. I'm a huge fan of Phil Hendry, and I do know that Phil Hendry and Art Bell used to have a thing with each other where they would. Phil Hendry would make fun of Art Bell, and it was all in good humor. He would make fun of Tom Likas. Anyway, just good radio, and those days are behind us. So, but anyway, let's see. I had mentioned, and I remember you and I talked on D Star here a while back. You've got everything hooked up over there, and you had played
Yep.
around with that a little bit. Um, let's see. How does a person get into summits on the air? Like let's just say I decided one weekend that I wanted to go find a site to activate. How the hell do I go about that?
Well, the first thing I do, well, what got me into it originally was hearing it on other podcasts. It did have guests on it talk about it, and I'd like, oh, that sounds interesting. So Google it. But the first thing I probably do with any amateur radio activity is go to YouTube
Yeah, yeah.
and start watching those videos. First thing I do is search out like introduction to soda, summits on the air, rules, stuff like that. And once you watch some of those videos to kind of get the rule, because the rules is, I don't know, I can't go on and read the rules. It's too long.
Yeah.
So I watch the videos and take notes on the important stuff, like the activation zone is within 82 feet elevation of the summit.
Mm.
So uh, go to I think we talked about this before. I'm like rambling. The thing with soda is there's a lot of different websites to go to. Pota, it's kind of all right there.
Yeah.
But with soda, the main site is sodadata.org.uk. And that's where you have to register your account so you can log your contacts.
Right.
It's also, you can look at the different summits. That's where you can find statistics and stuff like that. And then also on the same page, there's a way to get to Soda Watch to see spots. There is a thing called sodamaps.org, which is a little confusing to look at the different summits. The best one to look at summits, a layout, just to click on it and say, this is the designator,
Mm.
is sotl.as. And then that's a map. So you can bring up a map of your area and it'll show you how many times it's been activated. It'll give you the coordinates, the elevation, all that good stuff. There was a YouTube video I found there was a filter on CalTopo that puts the layout of the activation zone.
Mm.
And this guy, I don't remember his call right now. He was super cool. I saw it and I couldn't figure it out. So I sent him an email, looked him up on QRZ, sent him an email, and he responded like 30 minutes later with directions on how to do this filter. Super helpful. So that's kind of nice to bring up the CalTopo map, throw the filter on there, and then you can use that with your navigation when you're up there to say, am I in the activation zone? However, all the ones I've done, I've gone to the summit. There was one where I was so tired, I was looking at it and I'm like 2 feet from the activation zone. I think I'm going to activate, but then my son's like, no, come on, you got to go to the top. And then there's a number of other resources online. But to get into it, I just started YouTube videos, Googling, reading everything I could, and then just getting out there and trying it. One thing I would recommend doing though is setting up a station at a local park somewhere close to you, maybe in your backyard.
Mm.
make sure you have everything you need and work out any bugs or kinks.
Hmm.
Also, look at maybe some satellite footage of the summit. I really like my infant halfway for portable operation, but
Yeah, I was just
around
going to ask
here,
you. I was just going to ask you what kind of antennas you're taking out to do activations.
yeah, that is my favorite, but 90% of the times I'm using my buddy stick because there's just no trees, especially for Pota. I'm usually on the beach and there's nothing to throw an infant halfway up in.
Yeah, I seen your
I'm usually
activation
bringing
at the
out the buddy
beach.
stick.
I saw your
Did you see the one
activation.
yesterday?
That was cool, man. That was really cool.
Yeah, I kind of rigged it. It worked, but I set up two tripods
Mm.
and I got it was a probably what 4 or 5 feet in the air on where the balun was or the unknown, and then I put another tripod up on top of some rocks. So I got it to work, but that was kind of a pain, and I had to tie so many flags off on it to make sure
It didn't.
someone didn't walk into it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I once heard if you're ever lost in a forest or somewhere, just set up an antenna with a wire and someone will walk into it. You'll be saved.
it's like it's like what other hobby can you have where you could be on the beach one day, or you could be on top of a mountaintop, looking over a beautiful valley. And it's like the other thing that I remember watching one of your videos that you have on TikTok. Your antenna had fallen over.
Yeah.
That was priceless.
That was totally the fault of the assistant.
Yeah, because I remember you laughing about it and the assistant laughing about it, or maybe it was the assistant said the antenna fell over and you laughed and looked and ran over and grabbed it or something like that. That's awfully that's awful. One of the things that I noticed, the big difference between summits on the air and parks on the air is it's almost like the difference between day and night with both of those types of activities in amateur radio. The POTA, it's right there in front of you. You got a couple of sites to go to. It's right there. It's all written in plain English. And then you've got summits on the air where you've got a site here, a site here, a site here. You've got a register here and register here. That to me is kind of difficult. You think that they would make it more practical, unlike with parks on the air. But the good thing about the two of these two different hobbies that are attached to amateur radio is it gets people out and moving. It's kind of like the people who say that, well, why would I want to go out and do that? I can do that right from my cell phone. It's just not the
Yeah,
same.
I hate that.
It's not the same. Um, and the guy who sits around all day and plays video games in front of his computer. With this part of the hobby, you're out, you're moving around, you're burning calories, you're lowering your blood sugar. Come on, people, this is the United States. Everything bad is in our food that we eat every day. And what better way to go out and enjoy yourself than with a hobby that you could pick up a microphone and talk to somebody on the other side of the world, maybe doing the same thing. Like, I love to watch these videos on YouTube with park to park, summit to summit. And I'm the kind of guy who I don't really want to talk to somebody in Alabama or Georgia. I could do that all the time. I can do that on D-Star. I could do that on DMR. I want to turn my radio on, whichever one I decide to turn on at the time. And I want to go through the dial, the encoder, and see who I hear. And can that person hear me? People, you can do that on your cell phone. You can say, hey, I'm going to call Mike. He'll answer. We'll say hi and talk about the weather. I want to hear what my signal sounds like where Mike's at. Hey, this is N6PUD. Do you copy W6OBB? Yeah, you're 5'9". Cool, dude, you're 5'9" too. Great signal coming into Lake Elsinore, California. 7'3". That's it. I don't need to talk about little Johnny, how he, uh, got an F in physical education. I just want to do a quick exchange. I want to hear where you're from. And the big deal to me is I love a quick exchange DX. So, yeah, Parks on the Air might work for me. Summits on the Air might work for me. But the number one key thing there is you're out and you're working and you're doing something within the confines of the hobby of amateur radio, where it's not just sitting in front of your computer. I have never participated in field day. Um, Quite frankly, that part of it doesn't really excite me. I don't like that. Parks and Summit sounds so much more fun. Uh, it's a contest, but it's a contest where it's a little more physical. Yeah, you're going out, you're setting up a station in a park during field day, and you're making contacts. But it's a little different when you're the guy that's climbing up the side of a hill with a radio strapped to your back and your kid's behind you. Dad, slow down. Or he's on top of the hill and you're behind him. Probably be like that. Dad,
Yeah.
are you coming or what? That to me is the excitement of the hobby. And it's like if you look at guys, again, I'll refer to Art Bell. I remember in one of his interviews, he said his parents asked him, "Why do you stay in your room so often, son?" Well, he was a novice. He was enjoying the hobby. Uh, some similarities are he loved to listen to people talk, and he loved for people to respond to him. That, to me, is why I'm obsessed with certain parts of this hobby. I still operate Citizens Band. I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's stupid. Why would you do that? I still talk to people in the community. There's still a few folks left out here, and I enjoy that part of the hobby. The biggest part of the hobby that got me involved was knowing that I could run up to 1,500 watts on certain bands, or I could run as little as 5 watts on certain bands. And I don't have to worry about idiots interfering with my communication. There's a guy that's out there, for instance, before we started the podcast, he's in Belize, and he's QRZ, QRZ, QRZ North America, QRZ Europe, and boom, I could talk to that guy, and I didn't have to worry about a bunch of other stations not trying to contact him, trying to contact somebody else on the frequency. So there's so many things that are involved in this hobby itself. Yes, I'm only a lonely general, but it is an exciting hobby. And with a guy like Mike here, I mean, there's something that he can do with maybe with his wife and his kid. Um, that's what makes the hobby fun. If I decide I want to get on and listen to see who's out there and throw my call out there with 35 watts or 1,500 watts on 10 meters, I can do that. And that is what keeps the hobby exciting. And again, anyone can get their amateur license. It's not that hard. If you can't pass the extra, you still have the general. And the general will get you on HF, all of HF. You may not have the ability to talk in all portions of 20 or 40 or whatever, but you have a good sized chunk, and there are people that are talking in that chunk. So yeah, anyway, I'm babbling, but that's one of the cool things about the hobby. So let's see, what's something you could say to someone that may be thinking of getting their amateur license? And I think I just answered it, but what's your take on it?
Yeah, I would get out there. Let's say the internet's your friend, YouTube. When I've studied for all my tests, including the extra, I just use the online quizzes. Mainly QRZ's got a really easy one, and I think it kind of remembers which ones you get wrong or re-ask you those ones. I wouldn't, well, I probably, have people that sad hams that wouldn't like this statement, but I would just memorize the questions and answers at first. One of my Elmers who been in it for a long time said you're not going to learn it until you're doing it. So like
Yeah.
that was his recommendation. I mean, I studied and studied for the tech until I understood it. I didn't know when I took my tech
Yeah.
that the answers they're there.
Yeah.
So I sat there reading this book and trying to memorize everything in formulas, and I, I passed fairly easy, but I spent a lot of time. I mean, I probably spent like 6 months trying to memorize all that stuff in the book and learn it.
Mm.
Um, so then after that, I met another guy who had told me just go over the questions, memorize the questions and answers.
Mm.
He says, and once you get the license and you get to doing it, you'll learn so
Right.
much more. That's what I did for my general and my extra. And
Yeah.
even with memorizing the questions for the extra, that test was pretty tough. I think I missed two or three. But yeah, there was plus there was more questions on it. But uh, I would get that test out of the way, get your license, and then start exploring all the different areas of amateur radio. I mean, there is so many different aspects of it. I just picked up a an Arrow 10W split boom satellite antenna, which I haven't really played with yet. I took it out and heard a satellite on it yesterday, but now I got to try to figure out how to get the radio kit or my little handheld set up for satellite. So that's another aspect of amateur radio. Hey, you can talk to people around the country via satellite on 2 meter and 440. Um, I don't know. I probably got off in a
No,
different
no, that's
direction
good.
there, but
That's good because I feel like everyone out there that is already into the hobby can contribute to guys that are thinking about it or are very new to the hobby. I know myself when I first got licensed, and I was deathly afraid of keying the microphone up, especially on a repeater. Now, I'm not a big repeater guy, but I was afraid. I'm like, well, for all these years, I've listened to repeaters. I've listened to just, people like you and I having a conversation like we did on D Star. We're just, chewing the rag or rag chewing. And I remember my first contact on a repeater was a guy in, I want to say Oregon or Washington. And he gave me a history on my call sign. And I'm like, wow, this guy is so knowledgeable. How did he figure all this out? Anyway, he went and looked and blah, 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 blah. And this was on the Wind system. And it was cool. It was about a 10-minute conversation while I was driving to work. And that was really cool. And then, like you said, when it comes to studying with the tech, I studied for my technician license about 3 weeks. And, I work a job where I work from 7 to 3:30, Monday through Friday. And I used hamstudy.org. I purchased the app for my tablet and for my iPhone and passed it. I think I missed two or three. And when it came to the general, I sat and I studied that. I went ahead and I made an appointment to take the test, and I knew I wasn't ready. What was kicking my butt was 20 meters, where I'm allowed to talk, what's too close to the edge of the band, um, what is good amateur practice. Okay, so I finally was able to memorize those, and I knew as a general where you start and where it ends. And I finally, after getting that beaten into my head and looking at where I was low on that portion of the test through hamstudy.org, which is great. It's an excellent tool. There's so many out there that you can go to and use. So what I did was I went the next step. I paid for through Audible, fast track to your amateur license, and this guy makes it fun. And I studied. I used that, and I went back and I told the person that was the VE, I'm ready. And he said, you ready? I said, yeah, I'm ready. And I took the test, and I think I missed one. And the funny thing is the one question that I missed wasn't, it had nothing to do with where where you're allowed to talk, the power limits. It was what what bands do you have full privilege in? And I screwed up on 17 meters because I mixed it up, because 17 meters is 18 megahertz, and I confused both of them. I got it backwards, and it was funny when the guy says, "Well, would you like to know if you passed or not?" And I said, "Yeah, please." You passed, and I said, "What did I miss?" And he said, "This is what you missed." And I said, "Damn it! That is the only question that I did not, I confused still." And still to this day, I've been licensed now for 4 years. Still to this day, I keep a band chart right in front of me because I've been guilty of keying up on 20 meters and forgetting that my privileges as a general don't start until 14 decimal 225. And I'm like, wait, hold on, got to get out of here. But, you know, there are just so many things that you can do in this hobby. And I love, I love talking on 12 meters. I enjoy 17 meters. Uh, there's just no end to where you can talk, no end to where what you can hear. I've talked to Japan on 12 meters. Hell, I think the longest QSO I ever have had on amateur radio was with a guy in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We just sat and talked about New Orleans Saints, Green Bay Packers, and never had one interruption. And then the band started to switch, and he gave me a final, and I gave him a final, and that was it. So, listen, folks, it's a great hobby. And one of the cool things with the hobby is what Mike does here. He's a summit guy, and he loves to get out there and have a good time. So if I could maybe intrigue a person that doesn't have their license, or Mike himself could intrigue, and you are out there in the community, and some, I don't know, 15-year-old kid says, "What are you doing with all these antennas?" Well, this is what I'm doing. You want to check it out? There it is. You may have intrigued a kid that never thought once about doing it, or has a cell phone in his back pocket or her back pocket. Well, you can't do that on your cell phone. It's not the same. I'm using, I don't know, 100 watts, 20 watts, whatever. And I'm talking to a guy on the other side of the country or in another country. That's what keeps the hobby alive. People like you out there doing this stuff, making it exciting for yourself and for other people in the amateur hobby. So, I don't know. That's what I got. I don't know about you.
Yep. Yeah, and you're doing it without a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure.
Yeah.
I mean, you need a radio, some coax, an antenna, and a power source, and
Yeah.
you can work the world on 100 watts in a wire.
Yeah.
It's it. Yeah, I was trying to think. I just the other night I picked up. It's rare. It seems like that I get DX on Pota. I don't know why, but I got Columbia the other night and got all excited. I worked Hotel Kilo 3 Alpha Victor Romeo, a gym down in Bogota. I was like, wow, that is cool. And it was 20 meters at night, which 20 meters at night's been pretty active with the activity we're getting right now with the sun. I wasn't getting anything on 40 and decided, well, I'll switch to 20. Um, but yeah. You speaking of kids coming up, I did a soda recently, and there's a picnic table at the top of Valencia Peak, and I was up there, and this kid, probably 12 years old, give or take, hiked up there with his dad, and the kid sitting next to me, and the kid was really interested, but it was funny because he would ask his dad the question, and his dad would ask me, and then I'd answer. It's like the kid
Yeah.
was too shy to ask me, but he seemed pretty interested in what I was doing. And I was like, "Oh, it'd be cool, if go out there and get a youngster interested in it." I've tried to get my son interested. He was interested for a few weeks, maybe uh, 2, 3 years ago, and then he lost interest. And
Yeah.
my wife had an interest for a couple of weeks and lost interest. Although she still goes with me to Pota.
That's cool,
She
man.
she comes and brings the dog, and takes them on walks and stuff. So she doesn't mind hanging out there and
That's
while
cool.
I activate. And then my son, he just loves hiking and camping, so
Yeah.
he's really into the hey, I'll go for the hike part, and he walks around, explores, and he's into taking pictures and stuff,
Yeah.
and he'll help me get stuff set up and break down. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I say there are so many different things. When I was a tech, I probably had a dozen tape measure Yagis and all as I was into building. I like building stuff, so I was trying to make the perfect tape measure Yagi, and I would go up on mountaintops, or there was a school that was like 3 stories high near my house that the doors were open. You could get up on the roof, and I'd go up there and I'd make contacts from Fresno, and I'd hit repeaters down in Bakersfield, and then I'd get someone
That's cool.
to switch over to Simplex, and sometimes we'd be able to make contact. And even as a tech, there's lots of cool stuff to do. Plus, you got that was it 28.3 to 28.5 as a
Yeah.
tech for
Yeah.
HF.
200 watts, folks. You can't do that on
Yep.
11 meters. Yeah.
Not
Um,
legal, anyways.
well, yeah. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that. You know, one of the things I was just sitting here thinking about this, and I know you probably are going to laugh about this too. Is okay. You know, I don't know what type of work you do for a living. I I work in a shop where we manufacture restaurant equipment, and I work with pura Latinos, all Latin, all Hispanic folks. And one of the cool things about our hobby is we can talk to people all over Latin America. And I remember going to work, and I was just so intrigued because I had made like 10 contacts with stations in Morelia, uh, Michoacan. I had made contact with Chihuahua. I had made contact with Aguascaliente. I had made contacts with just station after station, X-ray Echo One, all over Mexico. So you know, I had made a little logbook that I carried with me as well as what I had here, and I'm like, wait, I wonder if anybody here at work are from those areas. And I was talking to a friend of mine. His name's Salvador. They call him Chava. And I said, "Aren't you from Michoacan?" He says, "Yeah, that's where I'm from." And I said, "Are you from the?" He goes, "That is the city that I was born in." And I said, "You know what? I talked to a guy for about 3 minutes, maybe, from your area where you were born." And he says, "Really? How did you do that?" I said, "On my radio, on my amateur radio." And I had actually brought him to my car so he could see one of the radios that I had in my car at the time that, did 10 meters. And this was, all on 10 meters. But you go to work the next day after you've made really, really good contacts. And I'm the kind of person who, I love football. I know my team's playing right now. I got a couple of guys I can talk to at work about that. But with who you made contact with that day, and you're like, man, you're so hyped about it, but you got no one to talk to about it. Nobody at work cares who you talk to on the other side of the world, or you know several thousand miles away. They don't care. But it's like, damn, I made all these contacts and I got no one to talk to about it. So that to me is one of the sucky things about the hobby, is like people just don't care. Well, I could do that on my cell phone. Well, I did it with 35 watts or 10 watts or 5 watts. That's the only bad thing about the hobby, is people genuinely just don't give a damn. They don't care about that. Like, they look at your car and they see a couple of antennas and they think you're a CB guy. Well, I am a CB guy, but I'm also an amateur, and I've got my sticker proudly posted on the back of my car that I'm an amateur operator. And yeah, that's what I do. That's the part of the hobby that is exciting to me, is making that contact and logging it and saying, hey, I got bragging rights. I made contact to that guy in Australia or New Zealand or whatever. But anyway, so you got any exciting exciting stuff today?
I think I'm going to head probably do a Pota. I actually was it yet? No, I think it was Friday. We had Friday off work, and I went out and
Okay,
did a Pota, and I ended up talking to
lucky.
a yeah, but they took away Columbus Day. I kind of would have rather had it split up a little more, so now we don't have anything off for October. It was his name was Randy. What was this called? N6HU. I did doing a POTA, and he was at home, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to be in the Morro Bay area Sunday, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be camping, and he's going to be at Morro Strand campsite, which is in Morro Strand State Park for POTA." And he said he's going to be setting up. He said he'll probably stop at some of the ones along the way and do some activation. So he's like, "Oh, you should stop by." So he said he plans on checking in. Check-in time at the campground is 2 o'clock. So I'm probably going to go do a POTA day, but I'm going to go by and have an eyeball QSO
Awesome.
and meet Randy and check out his setup.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe we'll do some POTA together. I was working yesterday. I think I texted you. I was having problems getting my ham stick to tune. I don't typically use ham sticks unless
Mhm.
it's in a park where there's nowhere to set up.
Right.
Um, and I'm going to operate from the car. They say with Pota, you can operate from the car. With Soda, you cannot operate from the car and you cannot use any permanent structure. Well, the night before, I did a late shift activation and I didn't want to try to set up my buddy stick in the dark. I mean, it was pitch black and there wasn't really anywhere to set up the in-fed half wave. So I was trying to get on 40 and I couldn't get the ham stick to tune. So after doing a little research, I found that it was probably the ground strap going to the car wasn't good enough. It had worked great for QRP when I had set it up originally,
Mhm.
which was just a little wire with the alligator clipped to a metal part of the car, but it wasn't working. So my wife hasn't seen this yet, but I
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
added a nice thick ground strap in the oh shit handle. Oops, oh that's right, you said you
That's all right. Yeah, we're
you
we're
gave the
good.
warning.
Yeah.
The OS handle in the back, I undid the bolt and then checked continuity from where the bolt goes to the frame of the car,
Yeah.
and it was grounded. So I used a nice, probably I think it was a 3.5 inch, 3/4 inch ground strap, made it as short as possible to get to the antenna on the roof.
Mm.
Hooked it back up and got back on there. Now I've got about a 1.5 to 1.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I forgot that's SD Web SDR. I was trying to find
Isn't
someone
it
to
great?
talk to, but yes, there was a bunch of QSOs going on. I couldn't break in. People were quick keying, and I'm like, damn, I really want to test this out. And I've got a guy that lives nearby me, but he was out to dinner and wasn't near
Yeah.
the radio, and I think we were
Yeah.
out as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
weren't near the radio. And I was like, oh, I can just go call CQ and listen to myself on the Web SDR. So got pulled up the Utah SDR and I was coming in 5.9 to Utah. And I was like, oh, great. So I got this ham stick working if I ever need to. I just have a mag mount, but the problem with that is it's not grounded to the car. So I bought, it's this little thing that goes in between the mag mount and your ham stick. It has a screw on it.
Yeah.
So you can mount your ground strap. So I had some leftover braided ground strap that I soldered some connectors on and got it attached to the car now. So I have a nice ground. It seemed to work last night. So now if I'm out again and I need to use the ham stick for some, I can throw that up there and do a quick activation. A lot easier to set up too than
Yeah.
breaking out the tri or getting out the buddy stick with the tripod or getting out the throw weights and trying to get something up in a tree or whatnot.
You know what's cool is like you go back and I love to watch old videos of amateur radio in going back to like the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, like the advantages that we have nowadays as radio amateurs is we have WebSDR, and it's such a great way to know that your bands are open and working and just where you can be heard. Like I used the Honolulu SDR and on my little 20-watt Zygu G90, and I could hear myself in Honolulu, Hawaii. Very, very low, but I could be heard out there. I don't know really. I guess I was like you couldn't even see me on the meter, but there was very little static. There was very little atmospheric noise or anything, and I could hear myself. But they were having some static crashes out there, but it was so awesome. And Half Moon Bay is amazing. I love Half Moon Bay. If I can hear myself on 40 on Half Moon, I know you could hear me where you're at out there in Central California and stuff. It's such a great gift that we have web SDR. So for those of you that are wondering what an SDR is, it's easiest way to explain it is it's a radio that is set up somewhere around the country that you can listen to hear the activity, and it's great. And being able to hear yourself means that the conditions are good in that area, and you could probably talk to other people in that area. So, and they're strategically set up throughout the world in different areas. That is amazing. They didn't have that back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. We do now, though. And it's cool because you can control that SDR. Ultimately, it's a radio, and you can control it right from your computer or from your phone. And if you can be heard there, that means that you're able to talk to whoever may be on the receiving end of that. And the other good thing about that web SDR is, say you can't hear that person in your area, but they can hear you in that area. That means that you could talk from your radio to them in that area. And I've done it several times, and it's great. So they may not, you may not hear them in your area, but they can hear you. And you can't hear them in your area, but you're using the web SDR. And they're like, wait, how are you talking to me? Well, I'm talking to you from my radio via an SDR to listen. And they're like, oh, that's cool. I've never thought about that. Done it many a
Yeah,
time.
there's a rag chew net that I check into almost every morning, kind of a round table, and the RV service net. It's like a weather
Yep.
net,
I know that.
and they
Yeah.
use it since we're not we're not working for awards on those nets. We're just talking, so we're
Yeah.
not using it to try to get WAS or DXCC. But
Yeah.
almost everyone on those uses it. We kind of started probably 5-6 years ago when solar conditions were really bad. uh, Brought it in, and then our net was able to continue. We could all still talk to each other, and 90% of us could be heard on the web SDR if we weren't being heard direct. So it kind of saved it.
Yeah.
I remember there was a while where sometimes the net didn't happen because no one could hear anybody. But that antenna they've got on that Utah SDR is just amazing. I don't know if you've ever looked it up and checked it out. It's a
No.
nice antenna. I can't remember what it was called, but man, that thing seems to pick up everything. It's funny you mentioned the Half Moon Bay one. There was another one before the Web SDR website became big with all the different links to them around the world. There was one that was in the Bay Area. It was somehow associated with Art Bell because it mentioned him, like, is maybe he financed it or helped pay for it. But it was one you could go to, but the only problem was it could only be tuned. Anyone could log on to it,
Yeah.
but it could only listen to one frequency. So it was funny. You get on there and you could tell people would be fighting over what frequency to put it on, because you'd be on 7.185 for a few seconds. All of a sudden it would change to 7.284, then back to 7.185.
Mm. Oh,
But now it's nice. What's that?
So it was on 40. That's awesome. It was on 40.
Changed
Okay.
the band too, but it
Oh.
would, once you changed it changed it for everyone that was listening. So that it's nice, the ones they have now where multiple people can be on, and you go down to the bottom to see the IP addresses, and there can be 30 people
That's
on that
awesome.
radio all listening somewhere else, even on different bands.
Yeah. Isn't that cool? And then
Yeah.
you can also operate your station remotely. I've got a friend of mine who does that. He he's got a really nice radio. He's never disclosed to me what it is, but he's got a nice setup at his place, and he goes to Washington all the time. And where he goes to Washington, he doesn't have antennas or anything like that, so he operates his station remotely from Washington. That's another thing you can do in amateur radio. The other cool thing is if you're not in the area and you want to talk to your friends back at your location and they're on a repeater, you can operate that repeater from your phone, from your laptop. Yesterday, the 10-meter repeaters were up and extremely active, up at 620, 640. They were up and operating. It was really cool. I don't have the ability to get on all of them. I can work a couple of those repeaters because my Zygu does split frequencies, and some of those repeaters don't have PL tones. So I was able to kerchunk the repeater from my Zygu, but I didn't do any work on it. I wanted to know if I could kerchunk it, and it worked. I want to say it was on 620 or yeah, there's so many of them, but it was cool. I kerchunked the repeater and didn't make any contacts, but I did kerchunk it. And as soon as I did that, that repeater went away. And about an hour it came back, and I was going to make contact and never did. I got bored and did something else. So that's cool. 10-meter repeaters are bitching. So, all right, well, I guess that's it. I know you got things to do today, and I got to go watch football and take my dog for a walk. Let's see. W6OBB is on TikTok. You said you had a YouTube channel, but you're not very active on it.
Yeah, I do have a YouTube. It's the same W6OBB. I record almost every single Pota and Soda, but just haven't spent the time to edit the video.
Yeah.
I'd say I have a motorcycle one that I had spent so much time on for like a year and uh, finally gave up. So if you're into motorcycles, it's Moto Mike 805, but I haven't posted anything on there in quite a while. I was going to post my ham radio stuff on it, but I posted a few videos and then noticed my subscriber count started going down. So I thought I should probably post another or create another channel that's just for the amateur radio stuff because I don't think my motorcycle subscribers wanted to watch anything about YouTube. Although I did do one video where I activated, I did, well, that was my attempt, the one that had the bad experience.
Yeah.
I rode the motorcycle to the beach to do a POTA, so I had everything in my backpack and set up, did a motorcycle POTA activation attempt.
Uh, I I used to do on YouTube. I used to do. We'd make little short movies um, with my kids when they were younger, just being kids, having fun. Um, had a pretty good, sizable user base on there. A lot of people liked it and subscribed, and I just got bored with it. Kids didn't want to do it anymore. Um, so there's, I have two of them. I also have my N6PUD channel on YouTube, which I don't really do many videos. I have one on there where I did my QRP contact to Russia. I forget what that guy's name is out there. RL5 something or another. I don't remember, but he's in Russia. I made a couple of contacts with him. Um, and just me playing around on DMR and D Star and stuff like that. Nothing really exciting. Most of my activities on TikTok. So N6PUD on TikTok. So all right, Mike. Well, hey man, I know that this one is going to work. Um, you're welcome to share it with anybody and everybody that wants to listen. I do this podcast because I love radio, and did one yesterday. Some of the pros and cons, more deep about GMRS, and it's just a crappy service. And anybody that wants to get into it, luckily, it's $35 for 10 years, and it's out there, it's usable, but it's just not a good service. So I delved in a little deep about that, and that's about it. So let's see. Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it. And before I came on last week, I listened to every single one of your episodes, and I don't think it'll be long before you've got a ton of listeners. Not saying it because you have me on, but I love your content. It's right. I feel like I was listening to myself talk a lot of the times
Yeah.
about your opinions and whatnot. So it definitely a great podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much. And again, that's one of the bad things about that hobby, GMRS. I mean, it people spend thousands of dollars on these friggin' repeaters, and they don't allow people to get on them. It's like, why spend all that money if you're only going to allow certain people on? But anyway, that's that. And again, thanks for coming on, Mike. It's been real, man. Good luck out there today. Hopefully you make lots and lots of contacts. And definitely thanks for coming on.
All right, thanks for having me. 7310 and
Yep.
6 PUD, Whiskey 6 Oscar Bravo Bravo.
All right, thanks, man. Have a good one. Good luck out there today. 7-3.
All right, 7-3.
All right, that's it, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful week. And I hope those of you that are licensed amateurs get out there and take advantage of the hobby, man. The conditions are in. I just got the notice the other day, so if you're not out there operating, shame on you. So anyway, again, the music here on the 5x9 podcast is brought to you in part by the fine folks over at purple-planet.com, purple-planet.com. Go check them out and get out there and get yourself an amateur license. There's so many places to go to get that license. Just use your imagination. So, all right, guys, hopefully you learned something today on this podcast, and we learned together, and we'll keep learning. All communications, everything communications, but today was kind of dedicated to amateur radio. So I hope you learned something, and you are 5x9. Have a great week, guys and gals. 7-3 and 6 PUD.